Chapter 12 is on instruction itself, and it's really a great chapter from the standpoint that I'm going to introduce you to a bunch of buzzwords and new vocabulary and stuff. And as a survey course, we're not going to spend a lot of time. It'll be a flyover from 10,000 feet, but I want to introduce you to the vocabulary. You can sound a little more educated about it in the future when you're studying some of these things in your instructions and your methods classes. A lot of material here. The lecture is not quite as long, but it covers the points and introduces you to some things that hopefully you can get your arms around. Chapter 12. Chapter 12, Designing Programs for Learners in Challenging Times, the Curriculum and Instruction. And unfortunately, this has changed a lot in the last couple of years as we move to a national curriculum. And if you're for national curriculums, you're delighted. If you're not for this, if you're not for national curriculums, this will seem like a long, old, steady grind. So what is curriculum and how does it develop? Well, anything that supports learning is considered curriculum, and that's a little bigger because normally we think of this over here. Curriculum is an environmental created by the intersections of elements. We think of it as my experience, I think of curriculum as a great big blue binder sitting on the side of the room that nobody ever opens. And every so many years they reprint the thing and nobody's ever looked inside it. And now that was 30-some years ago when I started teaching, and now it looks a lot different. For one thing, I would contend that you can't find a printed one. For the most part, they're digital, and you go to a website. Okay, so term it's different, many different ways. For example, in textbook selection committees, have a lot to it. Curriculum implies the scope of learning and grade level sequence. In school improvement meetings, curriculum might imply types of competencies that students would be able to master. Let me say it again: types of competencies that students should be able to master. And master is interesting here because mastering, knowing something, sometimes aren't a synonymous term. Curriculum can also include informal and less obvious parts of the school day, such as mottos or slogans on school walls. All can be impacted by curriculum. And the types of student work displayed in the classroom, even the way desks are arranged, are considered part of the curriculum. So ultimately, curriculum is the total environment. Let me jump over here. It's created an interaction of efforts to support learning, and that was on the side over here. Curriculum is the total environment. Let me highlight that for you. Total environment that is created by the interaction of all the elements to support learning. Learning standards, the content taught. I'm going to highlight this too. Okay, so learning standards, the content taught, the material selected, the teaching strategies used, the learning activities in which children engage, and the way school is organized. That's curriculum. And that's what fits over here. Can I ask you to be, that would be number 1 here. I guess you already have it here, but this is number 1, the definition. How about that? You don't have to add anything. Content taught, material selected, strategies used, activities, and the way the school is organized. And it's the interaction of all those things. That is the definition of curriculum. Did you know that? Could you have said that prior to this? Well, how did we develop this? Well, clearly curriculum school comes together over time, results of many different influences, and that they just changed with the adoption of this national curriculum headed toward, but made by state officials, school administrators, teacher community, and I'm telling you now, by people at the federal level, if it's not government, but people way above us, that I think it's very hard to impact the curriculum when you give that power all away to people at that level. So here is a diagram, and this will be number 1 that you'll put in, is the influence of curriculum. Look at here in the center, a little bit closer to school, community, harmony, or discord, values, beliefs, schools. 3 big rings. So you look around here, and even on this outside peripheral, religious beliefs, textbook publishers. Unbelievable. We'll talk about that a little bit, the impact that the textbook publishers have to say, because we adopt all this curriculum that we want, and then the textbook, then we order textbooks, and we're still at the kind of the mercy of the textbook publishers, what they've included. And they make kind of a funny spiel here in this chapter about that. But the mass media can affect it, political climates, court decisions. As you can see, it's just a crazy amount. So I'm going to clip this and bring this in, and I'm going to ask you to put that here. And this will be your number 2 input or clip. And I think it's 12.1, I believe. Yeah, figure 12.1. So you put that right there so you have it. So what are these many influences? Well, first, these large-scale curriculums, and I have them here too. Large-scale influences of the curriculum is here's what they are: court cases, state and federal legislation, teaching, content standards, those types of things, common core standards, national assessments. I'm going to ask you to bring those in right here, these large-scale things. This is number 3, and it's right here highlighted under large-scale things. Just a number of things that will be taught and learned in the classroom. In fact, these set of influences work against, I want to highlight that, they're speaking a little truth here, against local control of schools. Instead, the local control, there is growing movement towards the establishment of a statewide, even a national curriculum. And that's what Common Core Standards is a national curriculum. And we're not going to call it that now, but I guarantee in 5 years we'll just call it that, a national curriculum. So in other words, when we go back to describe what is curriculum, it'll be a national curriculum. So the influences won't be us, won't be our community, won't be our county, won't be our state. It'll be at the national level. So these interest groups are formal, informal, and formal organizations of individuals who hold a common interest and share this. These groups pay close attention to the work the committees do, like curriculum guides and test items. Each group is likely to have its own unique perspective. For example, here's the interest groups, and maybe you've heard this. Teachers associations tend to resist any accountability moves that would link student performance to tests with the identity of the teachers who taught them. Okay, so that is who's safeguarding that is these teacher associations do not want any connection for accountability to tests. So that's one. Okay. Many religious groups advocate that their positions, such as intelligent design, may be included or should be included in the contrary positions, such as evolution, receive less emphasis. So those are just some of the things that do. There's teachers groups, religious groups want some say on this, and then there's various accrediting bodies that influence this, like the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. These standards in some way set to a common curriculum for all schools. Example, schools accrediting bodies require each school to have a school improvement process, a SIP. Okay, right here. And who's on that? Well, plans include analysis of data about student learning, reports the year's efforts to improve specific plan. Each key student success on the state writing. The accrediting body expects, in some states, writing. The accrediting body expects improvement, student performance, a direct consequence of this. So who is this? For the most part, it is, right here and highlighted, a SIP usually is written by a school committee and a principal during the spring of the year. And so how are you going to improve based on these things? So that's what this will be. Number 4 is tell about the SIP, who's on it and what they do. And it's right here on page 334. There's a question on the test about the SIP. Who's on it, what they do. Now, on these governing bodies, for the most part, the one around here, it used to be called NCA, a North Central Accreditation. So let me just take you up here and look at NCA. NCA. What happened here? you try it again. North Central Accreditation used to be for years, and now that has switched over to what's called Advanced Ed, like this. And so this is the body that most of high schools go with around here now, and I have linked that in here for you right here. Okay. And what it talks about: accreditation, school improvement, continuous improvement, school improvement life cycles. What is accreditation? Why does it matter? How do we accredit it? Credit. So a lot of stuff on here of what it's about. How do we credit schools? Take stock of themselves, establish a vision, enhance the school's best thinking. So it's just an overall process of this. So how do you know, is your school accredited? I have that right here, and I ask you to find that. And so here's the link for it, like I'm telling you. And also a little form here. I'm going to ask you, yes, is the school you graduated from accredited? So you put down the school you graduated from here, and are you accredited? Yes, no, or you don't know. Okay, so I'm going to say my school is Rapids St. Mary's. And like before, I'm going to put this here, class of 1978. All right, and I'm going back here to C. So I come up here, find accredited schools up here, and you get a whole bunch here. But I'm just going to jump down here first. You have to tell it the United States of America, and then I simply tell it which state, South Dakota, and then I can just put the zip code in here. And I search. And it's right down here. This, you get all this, but I get this down here. So Del Rapids Elementary, Del Rapids High School, Del Rapids Middle School, and Del Rapids overall school, but St. Mary's is not listed here. So my conclusion would be St. Mary's is not accredited by this body. I'm sure they're accredited by some, but they are not accredited by this body. So I would say here, I don't know. Just because it's not there. Well, I'll say this. I'll say no because it's not on there. I know they're accredited by somebody, but not by that one there. So I do it like this, and it shows up here. And let me show you where that comes now. And there you'll see mine here, Del Rapids St. Mary's, 1978. No. Okay, now I want you to be able to see these as they come in. So let me give you a little technology lesson right here now. And so it go like this. I want to publish this to the web for you. And so I say I want to publish here, and I would like to publish it as embed it in a web page so you can see it without coming here. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it right here on our page. I edit. I'm going to stick it right here between the two. If you would, I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to insert a widget. This is free now. You don't have to do anything more with this. And it's a spreadsheet, and it's a Google spreadsheet, so I click that. And now I simply paste this in here, and I tell it to save. And it looks like that till I save this. And it comes in like this. And you may have to slide down a little bit when it gets full to see them all, but that's where they'll be, is right in there. Okay, and that's how we'll do accreditation there. I better mark that here. This will be number 5, we'll call it. And like last time, I am going to create a box like this that you will check off like that. And let me show you something else if I can. If you're on a Word document like this, I can insert a box that I'll have you check that shows that you did this, and it's a reminder, and it's a thing under Developer, and it's a little tricky. I'll just put this in here, and I'm going to try and enlarge it a little bit for you so it's a little easier to see. But you should be able to click on that and just makes an X like that. And then, you know, you can write me a note or something like that, but that's what you should see in your notes here, a box like that for you to check. Okay, so that was number 5. Yes, and now number 6, not number 6 yet. Let's go look at this community influence. Okay, what are the community influences of this? Well, it talks about depends what kind of community you have. Clearly, you know, your interests and priorities influence this. Like it talks about high school football and marching band. Your schools focus on those things that we've kind of taken away. It used to be you could kind of look at, are you a mining town, a manufacturing town, those kinds of things. But unfortunately, that's kind of been ripped from us a little bit with the national curriculum. But you certainly would impact by English language learners here. It says the curriculum influence of ELL populations are many. The population creates demand for teachers who speak the native languages. And you talk about a challenge is finding those teachers. We're starting to get a nice group, and some of you are included in this, that have Spanish that can teach that, but we're starting to get these kids from all distance grounds, Africa and stuff, that we don't have any communicating teachers for those. So that creates some more things. And this goes on to tell about the curriculum and how hard that is with the ELL, and just to do direct instruction it really doesn't work. The overall result, the curriculum in the classroom needs to be adjusted in response to the influences of it. They don't, you know, they're not ready to learn like everybody else. Okay, and then school influences on curriculum. Again, it goes a lot here, goes down here. Although teachers have relatively little say in curriculum selection, they have a primary responsibility for helping students learn and achieve the desired outcomes. And so that's a real change over the years. Used to be curriculum was always put together by teachers in the local community, and that's gone. But ultimately, you're responsible for delivering it, for doing the assessments and delivering the curriculum. So it says, first is the role of the teacher in implementing to that curriculum. Second thing here is implication that teachers have a plethora of curriculum resources to work with. Curriculum guides, teacher training sessions, textbooks, standards, benchmarks. And so let me come back to that for you. And that's what I want you to talk about on here, on school here. So this is number 6 here, where you put some stuff about community. And then for number 7 on school influences of curriculum, here are the things that the school can provide, like curriculum guides, teacher training, textbooks, standards, benchmarks. All that's provided by outside source. You provide the teaching and the assessments, administer the assessments. Okay. Then developing the curriculum. Divergent ideas. What are divergent ideas? Mean different. Those who engage in developing curriculum bring their own views, beliefs to the effort. And that's what you and I both do. Okay, we bring our own things. That's what makes this so hard. That's what's so hard about all of school in agreement is we all have different views. Anybody that's ever been to a classroom at any level now has opinions and views and beliefs about how it should be done and what should happen. So, for example, people who believe that all students can be trusted will press for activities that allow for student initiative, open-ended explorations. In other words, students to work independently, work collaboratively. Where curriculum developers who believe students will make a mess and break manipulative materials will develop activities that rely more on the teacher and the structure of the students. And I think there is a difference. That's why it's really hard to have a one-size-fits-all, because you'll have a group of students that can work independently and responsibly and have kids the same age, maybe even the same school, that can't. And that's what I think is the tragedy of trying to have a one-size-fits-all. So I believe students learning can come in and play as well. Some theorists believe that what is to be learned should be broken down into parts. Others see it as we can teach it as a whole. They'll figure it out. So all those different perspectives play a role in this. There's not a single correct answer to any of these questions. The best answer is a matter of perspective, depending on the perspectives of the developers and what they do. So here are those questions that we can't seem to come to grips with. What should be taught? And that would probably, I'm going to say these two things together will be the age-old thing that you'll be discussing 50 years from now when you're at the end of your career, is what should be taught and who should decide. Right now, this is going the way of a national curriculum that people 10,000 miles up in the air will decide, and that's who it'll be. For a long, long time, it was bounced around between local. It had community people, state people, teachers. A big group of people came together and do this, but we're giving that away. And then how it will be taught, I think, will still be a lot decided down at the ground level, especially how you present this. Okay. So who should, let me back up here. Think about determining what will be taught has serious implications. Should it contribute to develop of good citizens? And so I guess that's the first thing. What are you trying to get the outcome to be? Common Core is saying to prepare people for college, and you and I have talked a number of times that only half the students will go to college. So you may want to question a curriculum whose sole intent is to prepare people for college when that's not where people are going. So what extent should the selected component could prepare a student learn the advanced content? And then who should make these? Well, teachers, experts, politicians, or citizens? Well, right now it's the politicians. Should we ask community leaders and their input? Should we bring experts from different disciplines in? I mean, sometimes it's nice disciplines for experts in disciplines to have input, but to give that all away may not be the wisest way. And the more people you get involved in that decision, right here, and you know this, the more that's involved, the more differences, difficulty in reaching agreement, and that is the rub. It's hard to agree. But you think it's hard to agree, then give it all away up to in the sky 10,000 miles up and see how hard it is for you to impact things. And I think it's okay for you going forward, if you see things in the curriculum that you think aren't right, to push back on a little bit, to ask, to challenge. Because it wasn't long ago that you could impact the curriculum, but that's going away. And then question 3 brings up a new set of challenges. How will the curriculum be taught? What is to be done with the curriculum developers to answer these views? Answering all these 3 overriding questions will be the philosophical point of it. Okay. So here are those steps in curriculum development. Has a nice sheet over here for you. What's to be learned? What are the outcomes? What's the content? Organizing that content. What activities we're going to use. What we're going to use as a whole. And this is a big one. How are we going to assess it if they're learning it? And you would be able to put that together. Just looking at how that's laid out, you could figure that out. Okay, built out that way. And what are curriculum designs? Well, the different types of curriculums. These are reflective things. Very interesting here on these reflective ones. Asked to this on this reflection. Support preserving a democratic society. And that's a question, again, it's a little bit loaded, but what extent should that be the focus of your curriculum? What outcomes are important for the individual self-worth? So here we feel like as schools we need to work on that a little bit. So these are questions, value-laden questions about the curriculum design. Is it biased in one way, in some way against certain individuals or groups. And so it seems like you've always got to keep those glasses on. That prism, is it biased towards any group? And I think that's hard, because generally if we adjust curriculum for that, we end up damaging the group as a whole, so that we don't damage one small group. But not everybody agrees with me on that. Will it be available to all, or is it too expensive, too hard to teach? Does it have some components that are inaccessible to some? Is it built around the essential center of the discipline, or is it composed of peripheral and isolated items? What is the collective there? And one of the things I thought, like, for example, I saw where it was restricted that I wanted my son to be in an advanced math class in middle school. And they wouldn't let him say his test score was just a hair out of the range to be involved in that. And I felt that they were restricting him unfairly. That my choice was that he should be in this advanced class, and they were saying, no, we restrict that. Not everybody can be in that. So it was inaccessible to him, and nobody seemed to care about that except me. So here's the different designs. That comes down here. These different types of curriculum, and it 12.2, and this is the craziest one I've ever seen. This one is tipped sideways, and I don't quite understand why they do that. It's very hard to look at and read, and so I'm just going to jump over it here. Different curriculums, but what I would like you to do is let's see where we at here. We're on number 8. I would like you to do these here. You're going to have to bring these out. Number 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd like one more sentence. You can use this sentence, but one more sentence with that if you would, describing what those different curriculum designs are. Okay. Then college and career ready. Core academic skills, employable skills, technical job skills, and that's one of those debates is we're not sure, because sometimes these are somewhat incompatible with preparing people for college or career, because especially by the time you're in high school, those curriculums can look so different. So that makes that a challenge. This is very interesting. If you allow me, I just want to read this about college and career. And this is unfortunately, I think, where we're headed with the way we're setting up curriculum. If you allow me just to read this. Examining curricula in other countries can broaden our perspective about determining the proper goal of curriculum in the United States. Germany, highlighted there, right here, provides a curriculum that distinguishes a career-ready and a college-ready curriculum much earlier. Up until the 6th grade, the German curriculum focuses on the 3 R's and special ed and socialization. So reading, writing, arithmetic, special education, and socialization. But after 6th grade, extracurricular activities from music to sports are the responsibility of communities, churches, and amateur athletic associations, meaning the schools do not run those programs in Germany. And vocational education is the primary responsibility of business and industry. And why? Well, a little bit like here, because they have a marked interest in preparing people to work in their fields. Then health and safety are the responsibility of primary responsibility of business and industry. Health and safety maintenance organizations, government, churches, private institutions, and the home teach those. But after 6th grade in Germany, German students elect by choice and examination. So it's not entirely by choice, because you can choose one, but by 6th grade, you better score well enough on the test to be on a different route. The main school, the Hauptschule, about a third of the students, the Realschule, about 1/4 of the students, or the Gymnasium, about 1/3 of the students, whereas the Hauptschule and Realschule prepare students for vocational and apprenticeship programs. The Gymnasium is the academic school for the development of the mind and prep for college and professional careers. Currently, the U.S. debate about college ready versus career ready continues. Most schools tend to offer one general curriculum for all students and aspire to have all students college ready. Okay, so do we follow Germany? Okay, they aspire, here in this country, aspire to have all college ready, knowing half won't go. There's some movement toward providing alternative career ready curriculum in magnet schools and charter schools. And here's what I would like to see. If they would let me be ruler of the world, I would be for this curriculum with the ability to vacillate back and forth. Please don't make kids in 6th grade, which is about 12 years old, decide their future. And once you decide, in Germany, there's no going back. And that's what I think is. I think students should be able to select a vocational employment track, but with the ability that they could prepare themselves later for a college track and change. So what happens? We have a little of this now, though. If you completely select the working track, you never can get back from it. And here, now you need some foreign language, and you need some advanced math and stuff like that you've missed out on. And so I think we'll see this come in our country where you'll track them. I just think 6th grade is way too early. I'm not even sure 9th grade is time. I think students still should have some ability to try each of those and go back and forth. That maybe you'd like to do college ready, but you would also like to study some of those vocational things. And this becomes very limiting here. So what I'd like you to do with this college ready here, and this is number 9, just talk about Germany. What I just read to you there, it's on page 339. Give me a couple sentences there and turn that nice and red so I can see it. I want to just see your thoughts on that. Give me a little bit about it, but your thoughts on that kind of a curriculum. So co-curriculars, and you're familiar with these terms. Let me just drill them down a little bit farther for you. When most teachers, parents, and public think about curriculum, they think about the core academic subjects as science, math, and social studies. However, school includes other subjects such as world languages, physical ed, especially secondary schools, athletic, band, drama, choir, and clubs. These are other subjects after school. The clubs make the co-curricular, which sometimes is called extracurricular. Okay. So they can be equally important, but here, what are the difference? Well, co-curricular really are things that you do outside the day that involve curriculum from the day. Extracurricular are standalone things. So a lot of times athletics are considered extracurricular, but band would be a co-curricular because you would do some of the preparation as part of the curriculum during the day. Drama can often be determined as co-curricular. Science clubs can be co-curricular. But things are standalone like some of the other clubs, and certainly athletics tend to be extracurricular things. Do they involve the curriculum from the day? We're generally not studying sports during the day, but we do study science. We do study music and band during the day. The curriculum is especially important in high schools. Unfortunately, during times of budget cuts, various pieces of the co-curricular are targeted. For example, and I remember this, driver's ed used to be a free component of public schools. You don't remember that, but that used to be the standard. Every school had this in there, and now I don't know of any schools that offer it, and if they do, you pay for it. Most of it's run through community type things. You pay for it. Co-curricular teachers are excited about their programs and spend long hours after school at night and weekends working with students to publish the newspaper, yearbook, and those would be considered co-curricular also. Skills, lifelong. So they see a lot of value in that, but unfortunately some of that's where the budget cuts come out because it's not required stuff. And then the hidden curriculum. Let me see what we got here. At school, the non-core subject, after-school activities and clubs. As crucial as academics, often primary reason why kids stay in school. is to connect to that. And there, you knew kids like that, and you'd look back over your time at school and you'd say that's some of your favorite memories are those co-curricular, extracurricular activities. Not always what we want to hear as teachers, but it's a fact. And that's why it's hard to see those cut, or at least reduced, and it has to be carried more. So these hidden curriculums, message sent to students, teachers' expectations, what's important to succeed. And I want you to look through here. There's different things in here about it, like what does neatness mean, speaking one at a time, how do you behave, what do we do, how do we punish kids. Those are all considered part of that, what we call the hidden curriculum. And so I want you to develop this more. What is the hidden curriculum? Let me just see if I can pick out a couple other things. Examining the meaning behind the rules. Classroom and school, noting what's celebrated, what's deemed important, what's rewarded, punished. For example, are academic accomplishments celebrated the same as athletics? And for the most part, you and I would agree, no, they're not. Are students with special needs included or isolated? Do all students have equal access to algebra or advanced placement classes, or just a certain group? And that was what I was whining about, is that there wasn't all access to those. So this will be the number 10 here, as you develop this more. What is the hidden curriculum? Right. What are these curriculum resources? Curriculum divided. Each classroom has a rich and complex foundation. The tangible items for the teacher and the students include curriculum guides, textbooks, student workbooks, technologies, manipulatives, and lab supplies. All are considered resources. However, the curriculum is more than simply printed documents and hands-on manipulatives. It also encompasses school-wide resources, special purpose facilities such as media type things, resource center, playground, athletic facilities, cafeteria, auditorium, band, practice hall, arts, crafts, classroom. Each of these curriculum resources is important, and carefully examine to use them wisely. Textbooks, workbooks also included. I would like you, this will be number 11, as you finish develop what is also included this, and it's all from that page right there that I have highlighted on page 340. I would like to see a nice list of all the things included in curriculum. Okay, and then standards. There's 4 here published by the professional organizations, and those developed within each state and available through each state's Department of Education website. And recently, and this is the one that'll soon reign, is Common Core, the federal standards. English language arts. Now listen to this. Common Core standards for science have also been collaboratively developed by National Science Association, National Research Council, American Association of Science. School standards, a group achieved. Many states have already adopted them. Again, it goes to the national curriculum, a national test. Are currently under development of social studies. The likelihood of most states adopt these as well. Okay. So, standards are most important. They come from professional, state, and district. I want you to explain these, where they come from, these 3 things here. And this will be number 12, where they come from. I say, and they're kind of elusive here because they know already that this is going to be the law of the land, the Common Core, and it'll wipe out some of these others. And these other groups will still have some input in that, but they'll still have to be approved at the federal level. We can say they're not, but that's where it's headed. And again, like I say, some of us will celebrate that, some of us will find disdain for that, but I don't think anybody's going to ask us. Assessments. As a student, how often would you thought about asking or heard someone else ask the teacher, will this be on the test? And this here goes in to talk about, sometimes that's what motivates kids, is this something they have to know? A core assumption in some school districts in states such as Texas and Florida have no pass, no play rules. And a lot of our local schools too would say you have to be passing, 4 classes or whatever. So therefore, that becomes a little bit of a high stakes thing for the students also. It's important at least two reasons. Your students will be highly motivated to learn, and you'll quickly discover that your grade level critics are not covered in high stakes tests. And that's one of the criticisms of high stakes tests is it doesn't cover all the important things. It can't. It's not big enough. Both these reasons illustrate the important aspect of the curriculum. Curriculum is not just as what's in the textbook, nor just in the classroom lessons. It also embedded expectations for learning and related assessments. And so that's what we'll write for assessments, number 13. Here what I have highlighted. Embed the expectation for learning and related assessments. And then textbooks, and let me just give you this. Teachers, one of the primary sources of information about the curriculum is the commercially published textbook. It's a little bit diminished from what it was 10 years ago because there's so much information on the web now. But for the most part, this will still be the center of teaching in schools, is what the commercial textbook does in adopting that. And it's big business because big districts will buy thousands of dollars worth at a time. So it's a big business to who can get their their textbooks into a school. And here it says textbook publishers employ expert author teams and invest large sums of money to provide students and teachers with up-to-date and well-designed materials. In the U.S., for most subjects, textbook packages provide a bulk of the content. And I would agree, and you know that. They provide the bulk of the content that's taught. And so what I'm alluding to here is we really defer to textbook authors for curriculum. It shouldn't be, but unless the author is guaranteeing that they're aligning textbook with standards, they have the power here, and they also often provide the assessments for you. And so unbelievable power. So now we talk about influencing school and power in school. Get to the textbook authors. Get to the textbook authors. So no matter what we say about standards, you're still a little bit at the mercy of these textbooks. And I think we'll see that change. But right now, you know, when you were in school too, that you defer a lot to what the textbook says. I mean, just look at this textbook I use, how often I'm pushing back on this all the time, on this information. And the reason I use this textbook, and I've been asked this more than once, why do you use a textbook that you disagree with so much? Because I can't find one that I agree with. And so the only other option I have is to write my own. And I certainly don't have time or the expertise to do that. And so I feel like my next best thing is to push back on stuff I agree with in the current textbooks, even though it's somewhat unpopular. It goes on here. Most textbooks have an accompanying instructor guide, test banks, suggestions for extensions, special assignments. These textbooks have major subject areas such as science, math, English, training workshops, access. So there's all kinds of things. So that's what you say about textbooks is the power. You talk about that and what's all included, what's included. I say so dramatic influence on the whole process comes to the textbook. And we all want to say that's not true, but it is. So curriculum guides and course syllabi prepared by the school district and state. So you start to see school districts then taking this national curriculum and trying to put it together into guides, syllabi meaning a path of how it's going to be taught, just like we have syllabi for these courses. Now we're expected syllabi from middle school on up to be syllabi for the courses of what's going to be instructed. And often the districts, especially big districts, will assist in that or will really take control of that. They can draw connections between what is to be taught at each grade level and the expectation for student learning and standards, and often provide those assessments right with it. And so, for example, in Sioux Falls, where we have, let's just pick on middle school, we have 5 middle schools, and at least 1,000 students in each one of them. That creates a lot of sections. So rather than every teacher individually trying to create this, or even each school, the district at the district level, up in the sky a little bit farther, put these together. And those are guides and syllabi of what's going to happen. So prepared by the school district for the most part. And then frameworks often replace these guides. And the same with packages, that often the school district then will package those and literally bring them and deliver them in packages that you'd go through one package at a time. Change occurs in observable patterns. Anyone can observe something when you apply logic, discoveries, things. So here's what I want you to do with framework is I want you to tell about these concepts here. And so this will be number 15 here, and this is from page 341. Curriculum frameworks. And there it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them here that go with that. Then packages, some schools develop their own set of materials and should deliver districts a total package. And sometimes they get around textbooks that way. And like I was saying about textbooks, you think of what you spend for textbooks. They're not quite that expensive in the K-12s, but they're pretty close. And now multiply what you have times, for example, just say in the Sioux Falls, we're buying a 7th grade science book. There might be 1,500 7th graders in the district, and so you need that many more books just for that. So the district may opt to put together their own total package in curriculum and add all the stuff with it. Okay. All right. So the next is selection of management curriculum material. And that takes us down to, let me take you here. We're right here, which means it's time to take a break. Okay, thank you for the break. I had a nice break, got something to eat, a little more coffee. Let's talk about selecting and management of the curriculum. So why is this important? Where does all this come from? Well, large, diverse set of influences affect the process of designing curriculum. So we talked about the standards. Now, what do the standards mean without this part, designing it? So without some sort of control mechanism or an organized authority, it would be impossible for each teacher to choose what to teach and how to teach in ways that satisfy a majority of the influence. Down here highlighted, without some sort of overall authority, there would be no continuity in the curriculum from teacher to teacher, grade level to grade level, school to school. Okay, so that is the basis. And you and I would agree on that, especially in big schools. I'm not so sure this applies to some of our smaller schools, hence the origin of schools in our country, our state, our communities. But now, for example, Sioux Falls are so humongous, it certainly makes authority that it makes sense to have one overall body, somebody is the sheriff of this curriculum and this process. Right? So in the United States, who is the legal authority in the United States on education? Well, the feds think they are, but it's really the state. We've talked about that a number of times. And who is the state? Well, state legislatures, state boards of education, that group, Department of Eds. So here's the other levels. Okay, first of all, the state's role, because each state has that primary responsibility. Teachers need to know how this is done, and they can contribute to that process. States have assumed two major areas of responsibility: establishing what is to learn, and second, materials that can be used. Those are the two that the state has. Okay, setting the standard, choosing the materials. First of all, setting the standards. I'll jump down here. Once the state board approves all these input things, then the state board approves them. Then all districts and classrooms in the state are required to teach those standards because the state has that responsibility. And again, this is new in my lifetime and since I've been teaching. Prior to that, each district did their own. In the Sioux Falls district, the Sioux Falls district established it for their whole district. Then the state, and now I say the big thing is the feds want to take over. So they set the standards, and then they're required. And you're going to get to participate here under standards. I want you to say this part. I think this is number 16. You get to each of these. You get to have a little input. 16, a little bit of state standards, and I'm going to include this. State may choose curriculum materials like open adoption policy and state policy. And remember, I ranted already about this thing of textbooks. Well, that's what it comes down to. You can imagine, open policy is each district adopts their own, and a state adoption policy is the state adopts it. And it gives you some examples here, and it will have to pay, generally if a district or school decides to select materials not in the state list, it'll pay the full cost of those. If they adopt one off of there, the state picks it up. So, of course, with that, there isn't any district anywhere that's going to pick their own when they have to pay for them. Ultimately, though, we talk about paying for them. Who's paying for them? It's still the same people. It's the taxpayers. The districts don't have any way of generating income. It's you and me. So regardless if the school pays for them or the state, it's still coming out of somebody's pocket. In open states, it's a matter of local choice, and that's how they do. Now, as you can imagine, in South Dakota, we have open policy that our districts pick their own textbooks. But I guarantee if we go to a national curriculum, that will go away. The feds will also pick our textbooks, and my guess is they won't pick them, they'll supply them, they'll send them, and it'll be all digitized. So you talk about that here under curriculum materials, open, what were they called? Open and state adoption policies, and what each of those. So I'm going to include that with 16 here, those two. And now we're going to talk about the district role of textbook selection and office curriculum specialists. So no matter how they do it, ultimately they have to supply textbooks for the schools. And again, it's huge in a place like Sioux Falls, so it's so big. And I'm going to take you down here. Teacher participation in these committees. It's often done, and I got to do this a couple times, and it really was quite interesting. Committee examines available texts and material options and then recommends to the district superintendent, the school board, which material should be purchased. Teacher participation on these committees is important since they are the ones required to do this. So I'm going to say this is number 17. And you talk about teacher committee, teachers on a committee, school district people, committee selects it and recommends to the board. And then it's the board adopts it and those offered are selected. Then an office curriculum specialist. I want you to read this to talk about, in this include about generalists, teacher on special assignment. You write a nice part about what this has to do with the office curriculum, district curriculum specialist. There could be a teacher on assignment, a TOASA, which is familiar with, but this whole thing here. And that's still, I'm going to call that part of 17. And now the local roles. Obviously, you bring the curriculum alive in the school, be informed about the state standards and benchmarks, for the most part, manage the curriculum. And that comes down to the ground level as you and me and the teachers, where we manage that curriculum. We make that. Here's a word that you can use. Here's a word that we'll use here is operationalize. We operationalize the curriculum, and that's what I want you to put here, and that's number 18. As teachers, we operationalize this curriculum. Teachers also must also use the materials and strategies that will help students learn, obviously, and how this happens in the middle and secondary schools, it's run by departments. Okay, and so you have a science department, a math department, an English department, performing arts, everything's run through departments, and that helps you manage these materials and stuff. You always have a peer group. In the same way then down at the elementary, it's a grade level team. Or you may even have content-specific curriculum committees. But it always gives you a peer group to work with in operationalizing this curriculum. And so I would like that here also with number 18. Grade level teams, content teams, departments to operationalize this. That's selecting it. So evaluating curriculum in just a minute. I want to take you another spot now. I want to introduce you to this young man. His name is Ethan Young, and he's a high school student, and he just has some concerns about Common Core. And so I'm going to link this in. Let me take a look at this. I'll be right back. there, Ethan Young. And number 19 will be, what is his main concern about Common Core? What is his main concern about Common Core? It's about a 7-minute video. Stop this, watch Ethan, come back and answer this, and then we'll talk about evaluating the curriculum. So let's get back to evaluating this curricula. How do we know if this curriculum is making a difference? More so, we have to have some kind of a systematic, organized way to evaluate the curriculum. Because we get together, or the feds, or the state, or whoever it is, sits down and comes up with this whole thing. How do we know if it's effective and it covers all the points? Unless there's some kind of organization, some kind of evaluation of it. So it has to be done carefully at all levels, like from teachers in the classrooms to school, district level, statewide. In addition, even internationally, you want to look at it to be able to compare these studies, or compare students. So curriculum evaluation is primarily occurs in the classroom, and you know that. It's hard to evaluate it except if it's down on the ground in your classroom. Until it's implemented, the student is assessed. Direct evidence of effectiveness cannot be obtained. And the first step is the teacher. The teacher who implements the curriculum. Teacher informal assessment is how easy it is to teach and the effectiveness of textbooks, materials, and this. And again, this is what I say. So we're going to hand you a textbook. How do we know that's going to get the job done? And the amount of student interest and motivation are early indicators in this. And I would think that would have a lot to do with what school you're teaching in. But you can imagine this, that you would do that. You would look at the curriculum, you're teaching it. You would have a sense as a teacher how it's being received. Okay, so here this is highlighted. Another early indicator. So this here I highlighted, early indicators of teacher assessment of the extent of student learning. Informal teacher assessments and formal testing done, they evaluate it. And then this whole story here in the middle is about how they do some of that evaluations and what they do with it. Okay, then the national curriculum, let me jump back over here. Teacher evaluate the curriculum and the implementation process. Assessment of student learning is an important indicator right away what's going on. Then researchers, curriculum evaluators analyze the classrooms. Nationally, this NAEP and state standardized tests look at it. Then we get to the districts. Districts and state. Well, first nationally, too important, this NAEP, National Assessment of Education, at most grade levels. And down here I want to tell you this again, NLCB. Do you remember what that stands for? Right, No Child Left Behind. Congress has mandated that all public school students be tested each year in grades 3 to 8. Again, you remember, the feds have no constitutional authority over schools, but with No Child Left Behind, they mandated that grades 3 through 8 are tested each year. Let the state pick the tests, but they must be tested. And now I assure you, the feds, if we keep Common Core, the feds will also start to tell you what tests to give. And then this data allow labeling of schools and districts, even ranking them in terms of student performance in this, and hence the scores they get. Then the district with state curriculums, the school district states are focusing on student performance on the tests. No Child Left Behind mandated that test scores at each school be publicized, and we've talked about that before. I had you look it up, what the score was. In extreme situations, when the test scores are at the bottom year after year, such as Hartford, Connecticut, and Compton, Oakland, California, Lawrence, Massachusetts, Trent, New Jersey, the state may take over operation of the school district. And this has happened some places, and it says the results are mixed. Some places scores went up, but in others they remained low. Okay, so don't let that happen to your school where the feds come in or the state comes in and takes over and tries to run your school, because you can imagine how they run everything else. I can't imagine they can run a school, but they have had to do that where the schools consistently perform poorly. So ultimately, curriculum evaluation starts and ends at the local with you. Even though it's important to evaluate curriculum by making comparisons across districts, states, the bottom line is down at the bottom. down at the ground level, classrooms, let's see. It also teachers who are on the front line of the curriculum because they personally deliver instruction to see the effectiveness. That's why the practice of teachers and administrators regularly examining, and this is important. Some examples of the reflective practice of teachers can employ are this. And so I'm going to ask you to look at that right here. And this is number 20. Well, number 20, reflective. And you don't have to write all this. Just bring some one-linings about this. It's what you can do to do reflective things there. Okay. Internationally, test scores used to compare students, of course. All right. So that's evaluating the curriculum. Now we're up to here. Down U, the instruction, the teacher side of the curriculum. Now let's talk about you. This is where the rubber meets the road. The teaching side of the curriculum, instruction. So far in this, as we go through this look at the plan and instruction, a lot of it is above your pay grade. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to be involved, you're going to know, you're going to understand, you'll be the ones that they come to look at the effectiveness of curriculum, but ultimately this is where you are 100% in charge, and that is delivering, to teach this curriculum. And so let me just take you, ultimately this is you. Begins with students need to learn these instructional objectives, and that's how do you create this learning now. Okay, teachers, you for the most part select strategies. This is a thing, especially in a bigger school, but you'll have school-wide things of how to better deliver this. What are the tools? What are your resources, and how are they changing? But this is you, that you deliver this. You create instructional objectives daily. What is it there's to learn today in my classroom? What are they to learn today? Okay. That's why I have this on each of these also. Here are the instructional objectives each week. When you're done with this lesson, you should understand these things. You should have a feel for each of these things. Each chapter, every week I had this for you, of what this is about. I tried to give you this also of how it was going to be laid out, so that you would have a preview of what learning was going to happen. All right? So first of all, what are these instructional objectives? And here's the thing with this, and I've given you this a number of times throughout the course, but there's some terminology here again that I want you to be familiar with, to have a working knowledge of it. Some of this will be gone, you'll drill down deeper in your more advanced classes, but at this level, and this course is really considered a survey level course, meaning at just a surface level, but it's the vocabulary that you need to take forward with you. And terms like objectives will be a common language for you as a teacher, and as a student teacher, and as a pre-service teacher. So throughout this whole course, giving you vocabulary that you'll want to work. And so I know a number of things here that won't register with you, but if the vocabulary, if you've heard it before. So instructional tools for creating the focus are called objectives. These are statements of expected learning, student learning for each lesson. The difference between objectives and standards is the size and scope of learning described. And so I would like you to put that right here. This is number 21, is the difference. Difference. Right here that I have highlighted. The difference between objectives and standards is the size and scope of learning described. Standards represent the broad learning outcomes that students are expected across several years. Benchmarks address parts of those standards, but they are quite broad and can describe learning accomplishments, can take months. So instructional objectives are daily. daily expectations, and that's what we ask you to do each day when you go in front of students or go in with students to teach, that you have objectives. What is it they're to learn today? It's a daily focus. And often we come to observe you as a student teacher. We'll want to know, what are your instructional objectives for that lesson, that day you're teaching? They have to be closely tied to the expectations and to standards and benchmarks, but you have to have something to. Contrary to what some teachers practice, objectives for instruction should be known and understood by both the teacher and the students. And that's maybe a little bit of a change, but now you put that out there. You start out your lesson telling the students at the end of the class, this is what you need to know. And technology really kind of makes that simpler. You can run that up through technology or through their iPads or whatever your instructional tools you have. Okay, so this is important also. One of the important elements of writing objectives is having an understanding of their purpose. When teacher education candidates first write objectives, they frequently write them as input, which describes the teacher will do and what will happen in the lesson. The following objective is example. The student will be assigned to groups and they will read the chapter in the text. Such that an input objective is no longer acceptable because it fails to clarify what students need to do. So that's a change. I'm going to put that on. So input is what you're going to do, but what we're changing this to, writing objectives that are output statements, which describe what students are to learn. For example, as a result of this lesson, students will be able to compare the reasoning behind the economic and political arguments for and against withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. So inputs were what you're going to do. We want you to write outputs, and I would like you to do that. Here, this will be number 21. Or number 22, I guess we're at. Input, write something about input objectives and output objectives, and make sure you notate that this is the desirable one now, is output, what the student will do. And this is a little comparison here between inputs and outputs. And I'm going to ask you to bring that in. That is clip 12.2. And so this will be number 23, and it'll go right here. So what about these types of instructions? Types of instruction, objectives. And again, here's the terminology, objectives. And we'll look at a number of them here. Behavioral objectives, cognitive domain, and affective domain, and psychomotor domain. So each objective, each class, each instructional time, you would write really two separate objectives. And I want to jump back here to objectives again. What are the objectives? Short statements of expectation for that day, daily. What will the student learn? What can the student do, or what will they know when they're done? Not what you'll do, but the student will know. So that's the output of it. And should be known and understood by students before instruction. And so you're a little bit more organized. You have that ready to deliver. You have that ready to show students, because like you, maybe it's a little easier for me to learn, and for you to learn if you know ahead of time what it is I'm supposed to know at the end of this. Okay. So two types of objectives for each lesson. Behavioral objectives and then learning objectives. And we're going to look at several different types of learning objectives. One for the cognitive, one for the affective, and one for the psychomotor. So let's first look at behavioral objectives. Focus on observable performance or task. That's what a behavioral objective is. And this is a term that has to be part of this, is observable. You have to be able to observe it, mark it, measure it, know about it. In fact, the proponents of behavioral objectives advocate that if learning cannot be described in terms of observable behaviors, then there's no way to tell if learning took place. Let me give you that again. If it can't be observed, the learning, that they've known something, if you can't document it, then we're not sure it took place. So from that, learning can be described in terms of behaviors. This means that behaviors, the verb, action verb is key. So this can focus on behavior, can be perceived as like to observe, classify, name, list, or interpret. And so that's what I would like you to bring in here for this one, is those things. Observable or performance or task. And I would like you, this is number 24. Yes, number 24. And it comes from right here. I'll highlight it here for you. But this is what it means to be able to do it. To observe it, to classify it, to name or list or interpret it. And not words like appreciate and understand. It has to be more measurable than that. That would be your behavioral objective. Okay. Also with 24, I describe a little bit what is a task analysis. And it walks you through that here. What is a task analysis? So those are our learning objectives. This approach to thinking about learning, teaching has been criticized as too linear. Still, it's useful for teachers and students to understand what it's about. So that would be number 24. And then this cognitive domain. What is cognitive domain? Okay, this is here is in 1956. Okay, of course to you that is another world. My dad graduated high school in 54. Then went into the military. So in 56 was around the time my dad was in high school. My dad's an elderly man now. But this is when this came up. The taxonomy of educational objectives. The classification of educational goals, the handbook. Cognitive domain. And the person of this was Ben Bloom. And hence Bloom's taxonomy. And if you haven't heard of this, it means you're just starting your educational program, because it's a big part of anything to do with teaching. And again, I sure hope that you come back to this in other courses in the future. But again, I want to introduce you and give you this vocabulary now. But it's Bloom's taxonomy. So what Bloom found out, or Bloom discovered and created, was that knowledge has different levels. It's not all the same. They identified 6 levels of learning and therefore educating objectives. It's been revised a few times, but ultimately this is what it was. To remember, to understand, and then to apply, and to analyze, and to evaluate, and then to create. And so, for example, this course here is at the bottom level, really, to remember, maybe to understand. For the most part, I have not asked you to apply, analyze, evaluate. I mean, a little of that, but for the most part, a survey level course like this, it's at this lower level. And this is one of the things that you'll ask yourself whenever you're creating these learning objectives. What is the level at which I want them to learn this? To just remember it, or on up here to, to a deeper understanding of it? And know this: it's you have to go through these in a learning process in order. That was Bloom's contention. And so you'll decide what level is this being done. So it's Bloom's over here, a system of classifying knowledge, learning outcomes in terms of complexity of mental activity required. So I have clipped this, and I'm going to ask you to, when you come in here, slide this down, and number 25 is clip. This is 12.3. And put it right there and slide these others down. So that's the first one. Learning objective for cognitive. Cognitive meaning what you know, what you think about. So then the next one is affective. Some would pronounce it affective. I say affective. Student learning, also important. And this person was Crothwell's affective domain. He had a different look at this. So the difference between affective and the cognitive is that this is about students' attitudes, how they receive this. And you can see it's about the same time. The other one was 56, so just about 8 years later in 64. So it's kind of they're almost in educational terms parallel each other at times. And Crothwell found that the students were more receptive to learning depending on their attitudes about it, how they felt about it. And so he felt here with his levels, receiving it, in the description, how you respond, how you value the information, how you organize it, how you characterize it. So I have clipped this also, and so for Crothwell, I'm going to ask you to come in here and make this number 26, and of course push this down and talk about Crothwell here, and then bring in clip 12.4. Affective domain, and now psychomotor domain. Psychomotor domain really has to do with this physically doing something, mind, body to work together. So who's interested in this? Well, this is where the music and art, drama, industrial arts, and other vocational courses require them to perform. At the end of this, you have to physically do something. And so that's all you have to do here is talk about who is this, number 26. Or this is number 27, I'm sorry. That the who's interested here is the music, art, drama, industrial arts, and other vocational courses are interested in psychomotor. So cognitive is how to think about things. Affective is how you value and your interest in it, and the last one is physically, if you have to do something because of the learning. Those are the objectives of your teaching. And every time you write, every time you approach it, that's the prism that you'll take through, that you'll go through. What is my cognitive part of it? What is the affective psychomotor, if it is? And ultimately, what is this observable performance they'll have to do? Objectives. Let's move on from the objectives to the teaching strategies. And so we have a number here that we'll go through, and I'm going to go quickly through these because I'm going to make this number 28. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this here is just a heading, really. Same with indirect instruction. You'll come up with something of how that relates to these. But these are the strategies now. And again, why I'm not going to really concentrate on these is because I just want to get with you now vocabulary for future learning. Here's some vocabulary, so when you hear about these in your instruction and your methods classes, that you have some vocabulary already on what those are. So let's take a quick look. So you understand the standard now, and you've written objectives, behavioral and learning objectives. And now, how are you going to deliver? And traditionally, it was that stand and deliver model. You stood and delivered, or I stood and delivered, and people learned, and that's what learning looked like. And that's really the ultimate what direct instruction is known as, is that part of it. So it's involved you delivering and who's receiving it. And so what you can write about this is right here. It's a teaching approach in which the teacher clearly and succinctly provides precise information about a specific topic, concept, or skill. I will call this traditional teaching, where you, the teacher, simply stand up, deliver, and provide information. And it's still considered an effective method. Reads right here, during the last 30 years, extensive research has been done on the behaviors and teacher and effective direct instruction. When the direct instruction is done well, with appropriate learning objectives, student learns two basic underlying assumptions. This are that the teacher knows the content, and it's the easiest way for students to learn it is the teacher directly communicate to them the information. So that's that's the assumption that this is built on. So here that the teacher controls the flow and the message and the time, and really is to maximize what we call here this active learning time, and you can put that in your note also. Active learning time, it's supposed to be at a greater level in direct instruction because the teacher takes the time to deliver the information. And then this debate is who's right, and it's a discussion about homework. And I'm going to put that on here. Again, I'm going to make a checkbox. This is, should we abolish homework, yes or no? And again, I'm going to ask you not to respond to this in discussion until you've read both sides of this. And again, in the notes, I'm going to push this down below the direct instruction. I'm going to have a box. You're going to see a box like I showed you earlier that you'll check indicating that you've done the discussion. And it's a reminder there. And don't check that off. I'm not going to put anything with it. You're just going to see a box like I showed you earlier for you to put a check mark in that you've done it. All right. And that'll be the extent of direct instruction. So now let's look at these indirect things. I want to just flip back and show you a little bit, if you would, about this right here, the direct instruction. Should best, when learning objectives are clear and narrow, should be presented in a sequence, one step at a time, should check carefully for the understanding, practice of corrective feedback, avoid negative criticism, view key points, and this is the one where I would call it, this is the one where the teacher does all the work. Okay, so indirect instruction looks a little different. Teacher or students pose a problem or puzzle. The problem or puzzle is one of the amazing, and puzzle meaning something to figure out, is one that stimulates student interest and inquisitiveness, so that you can see where this is going a little bit inquiry learning. Teacher does not provide the answer or problem solution. The students initiate activities and investigate. Teacher serves as a guide. And that's the change. The teacher no longer is delivering. They're the guide or coach of the information. You no longer are the transmitter of it. You're the guide or the coach. And when students are stymied by all possible solutions that are given open consideration, and students articulate orally in writing or through presenting reasoning behind their answer solution. So now the indirect instruction is we shift some of the burden of learning and teaching to the students. They start to share. Direct instruction, the teacher carried it. Now it's a shared group. The teacher becomes just this guide or coach of learning, not the transmitter of the learning. So this is called direct instruction, and we have guided discovery, inquiry and problem-based learning. And again, here is some definitions here that may help you. But again, I will be very surprised if in your preparing to be a teacher, in your methods and stuff, that you don't come back and visit some of these. Inquiry, problem solving, problem-based learning. And then we go to the self-regulating strategies, and it looks a little bit the same. And what self-regulating strategies are for is to help train students how to regulate their own learning. So there's a cognitive learning strategy and a metacognitive and social effective strategies. So the cognitive learning strategies help them organize information mentally or physically and manipulate material or apply specific techniques or learning tasks, what they can do as far as related to the task. But metacognitive strategies are this: monitoring the thinking. It's a skill requires awareness, reflection, interaction. Those are some buzzwords. Reflect, interact, be aware of. And again, so that's part of your vocabulary. And all of these, again, please read these all completely. Cognitive learning strategies, metacognitive, social effective, and that is how you're going to interact with others. And why this becomes important, because you may need to very directly teach these skills to students prior to them being able to be successful in indirect instruction. And hopefully your school, that they come into your grade, say for example you're an upper elementary teacher, that this won't be the first that they're introduced to these concepts. So social is to practice listening skills, restate what others have said, design probing questions, determine how the talents can complement others. That it's socially how they interact with it and with each other in the lesson. And then scaffolding, this is Vygotsky's 78, so it's not that far out of this time zone that we've been looking at, and it's really teaching about what a child can do alone versus what they can accomplish with somebody more experienced. What's the level of where they get their learning? And so that will take you down through here. All right. So organizing students to maximize their learning. And this is the different grouping here. Difference between a homogeneous group and a heterogeneous group. And you know how this is. Like a homogeneous group that they're alike in terms of their abilities to learn or interest. And heterogeneous students are different. And then cooperative learning groups, students in a way that provides specific roles. And I can remember when cooperative learning was first rolled out when I was first teaching, that you spent time, if you're going to have a group work together, that they didn't all do work on the same thing, that each one in the group had a very specific job on that. Typically in cooperative learning, these are some of the jobs. You would assign everybody a job, and so like it could be a group leader, a monitor, a resource manager. Let me see what else we have here. A recorder, and this is what you would do. And a reporter, you could have somebody that does the speaker, the writer, something, whatever those are, but everybody has a job. And that's one way to do kind of this heterogeneous versus homogeneous. Heterogeneous, if you read this here based on, a cross grouping by different abilities and interests, that's one successful way to include them, is to go to a cooperative model where everybody has a assigned group. So those are the strategies through that. You don't have to do anything with this page. Use of technology to enhance instruction. I really think I'm just going to cut you loose on this and let you put this together yourself. This first whole part on working together is right here. Instructional features for effective integrating instruction. And it talks about students working in a group, achieve across variety, those types of things. And then we come down here, and each of these are headings. So what I'm going to do, where are we at here? We're on 29. I'm going to just ask you to do this, because there's lots to come on this. But each of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 things, and just a brief thing for each of those. And save that, and you can come out. And a lot of this you're familiar with. None of this will be new to you. And we'll go on to this about matching instruction here. So now, how do we match this to the learner's needs? And we look at we've had studies already about how different students are, how they learn differently. How do you do this? Well, the newest thing, and I call it that, it's been around a while, but it will be new to you, and that is the idea of differentiated instruction. Let me just take you a peek over here. It's matching instruction to the needs of students that can be based on these things: ability and prior experience, our learning styles, our conceptual misconceptions. And I'm going to make this number 30, where you simply put something in here for each of these, what they have to do with it. So this is regardless of their types. Every student respond differently than each other. So immediately show mastery outcome. Other students may exhibit misconceptions while other students may be confused. So what I want you to do, it gives you a scenario for each of these here. What do you do with the student that shows mastery? What do you do with the one that has misconceptions? And what do you do with the student confused? And it says here, for example, that the student that shows mastery, immediate mastery, could be provided inquiry lessons in an effort to follow them deeper in their understanding. Or the student has misconceptions, may need some direct instruction. And the student that's confused might benefit more from a totally different instructional method altogether. So I'd like you to put those three things in here about differentiating instruction. Then ability grouping. And there's some controversy on this, of course, is should they have different, be in different groups? But there's some information there. And then on these learning styles, and it could be a couple like sensory inputs could have something to do with it, or student processing information. I'll let you pick through that. And then this on a differentiator on conceptual misconceptions. And what you want to do is correct those as quickly as possible if they have a complete misconception about the information that you're providing. And then this goes into the strategies for students with English language learners and disabilities. And that's laid out pretty well here. Predictable classroom environment, non-verbal ways to demonstrate, content around themes, question them effectively, make sure it's understanding. A lot of this, they can cooperate with each other. And this is a big one. It's easier said than done. And this will be effective for both the English language learners and the students with disabilities. And this takes you through all that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to just kind of jump over this here because you're going to revisit this a number of times. I'm not clipping that either. And then it's going to take us, this is still that. And here's a thing on collaborative classroom about your dispositions and stuff. And then working with special needs, and it's really going to interesting. It's going to take us through all the different disabilities here, like learning disabilities, hearing impairments, and I'm not going to have you work with this. I think you're going to revisit this other places, and for sake of time, this is on visual impairments, a very low incident disabilities, impairments. Here's how to work with physical impairments. Emotional difficulties might be, in my opinion, the most challenging to work with of all the different disabilities. All right. And then monitoring this progress through data-driven instruction. So here comes the third component of this instructional model, and that is this constant monitoring. We call it data-driven instruction, and that's your continually monitoring. Assessments can range from short quizzes and relate to specific learning outcomes in the day, or more complex than that. And so you're monitoring progress through the teaching instead of a summative thing, as we studied before. A summative evaluation is you don't evaluate until you're all done. But now a model more so is this constant, ongoing monitoring. We call it monitoring progress on the objectives, on the standards. So you don't spend a lot of time before you know if there's learning taking place. Helps you decide what you haven't taught well enough or what needs a different model to teach a different way. Helps you with differentiated instruction. So with that, there's a number of parts here. Effective teachers consistently rethink and redesign based on these assessments. So you have 6 steps to this collection process. Collect the data, reflect on the data, translate that data, redesign what do you have to do, assign feedback, and then your formative assessment on the instruction comes. And I won't have you do anything with that. I think you'll be fine with that. Let's talk about models for school reform, and I'm not quite sure how that fits in here, but let's take a look anyway. The big thing to know here is what this process looks like. Generally, it's multi-year things in certain subject areas. It seems like it's a common thing to do. We run for political officers. You're going to reform the schools, and everybody jumps on that bandwagon, and then we have lots of different models that come to form. But nonetheless, teachers will have new in-service. You'll all adhere to the same approach, same teaching strategies, and that it takes time to do that. And in here, it takes you through a number of different ones. And I'm not going to have you do anything with these just because there's so much here. So that'll do it for Chapter 12.